My tab is, I say this all the time, it's really dumb, but it's fun. So we're going to do the best we can. So I don't even know how I found this. It's not that random of a tab to start with, but I had started something else and I looked at like 14 other things. And then I just came across this one. And then I was like, okay, well, this is fun. So I didn't actually have this specific tab open like amongst some of my other tabs. I found it by doing a different dive, if that makes sense.
Yep. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, and I think I might have mentioned this on a previous episode, but it's fun. The longer we do this, the more I'm like, oh, okay, like certain tabs don't work for this. Yeah. And then it's sort of, it's training me to be like, okay, well, this could work better as a tab for the show as opposed to something else where there's only like a half tab or something.
Or there's like okay, one little instance within that that you can go off on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this one, it's an article from the Washington Post and it's written by Michael Ruane, and it's titled, sorry, Michael.
What's the guy we always say?
Sam Worrell. It's written by Sam Worrell. He's writing for the Washington Post now. Dead. He's an excellent journalist. And the article is titled, "A Chinese Cigarette Tin Launched DC's 50-Year Love Affair with Pandas."
What? Sorry, that's just a lot of words together.
It's a lot of words. Okay. I'm going to tell you the story. So there's a...
Okay, tell me.
So Richard Nixon, you've heard of him? He's famous for a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think the first people that think of when they think of Richard Nixon, what he's famous for, it's like his intense sexual charisma.
Yep.
And the other thing he also did was...
in general.
Period, yeah, and his sexuality.
His looks.
But his laid-back nature.
Yeah.
But he also opens up relations with China, right? That's probably the most famous... Or sorry, actually not the most famous, but the most important thing he did while he was president. That's arguably a lot of historians say.
I had no idea.
You didn't know this?
No, because it's all overshadowed by his crimes.
Sure, right. Oh my God, that's so funny. Okay, yeah, no, Nixon.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's one of those things where I realize now there's some stuff where it's not so much I'm like, you didn't know this. It's more like, how did you miss that? Like, how is that possible to have avoided it?
The answer is always the U.S. school system. That's how I missed it.
So Richard Nixon opened up relations with China in the 70s. Him and Henry Kissinger very famously did this. I was not prepared to go into this, but I'll give you the quickest of primers that I can. At that time, so Kissinger, rest in piss, he...
You know what, though? You're going to run out of piss. As that
yeah, that's true. There's not nearly enough piss to piss on that man's grave. Anyway, realpolitik was the sort of philosophy that they had that Kissinger famously brings to the U.S. And it's basically about like political pragmatism, about being like, okay, just look at it for what it is rather than ideology that you might have had like previously that's attached to your country's, identity and nationalism. Who cares?
Wow.
So they come up with this plan where they're like, okay, well, the Chinese are not quite opened up to the West yet. I mean, they're not opened up at all. They had gone through the communist revolution and they're still kind of like, they're creeping along, and the Russians are a big threat in the Cold War, and so Nixon and Kissinger come up with this plan where they're like, well, we should open up relations with China because no one would ever expect us to do so. And of course, Nixon's like they're extremely anti-communist and China's communist, and it's sort of this weird, insane, kind of bizarre moment in history that the Chinese are like, yeah, sure, come on in, let's do this, let's figure it out.
You know what? I did know this.
You did know it, okay.
Because I know I've mentioned it before, but my grandpa was a political scientist and an international relations guy, and he was in China a lot in the 70s doing diplomat stuff.
Diplomatic stuff, yeah.
It's more like educational, like outreach and stuff, and had like partner universities, and he would go over there for like my dad lived in Taiwan when he was little and stuff like that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, so did I, but I was 1. I don't remember it.
You never told me that.
Yeah. You didn't know that?
Are you an American citizen, Hannah, or are you a foreigner?
No. I moved to Taiwan soon after I was born, so I'm a citizen.
Wow.
But my family has a lot of ties. I did. Can you believe that? A 1-year-old stuck at the airport eating McDonald's.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I did know that because... because my grandpa, he does a lot of China stuff.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Anyway.
All right. So you did know some of it. Anyway,
I did kind of know that. Now that you're saying this, I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay, go on.
So Nixon famously opens up relations to China for the reasons I just explained. So him and his posse, they arrive in China. I think the first day of it is February 21st, 1972. And it's this like huge historic thing. There's like, there's press everywhere. There's cameras. They're doing like photo ops and making stops everywhere and like smiling and being like, oh my God, look at how great it is.
Kissing babies.
Like, kissing babies, like doing that whole thing. And that first night that they're there, they have this banquet in Beijing. And, it's this really nice banquet. They pull out all the stops. They have nice foods or servers, all this kind of stuff. And they seat Pat Nixon, who is Richard Nixon's wife, next to the Chinese premier, Zhou Enlai, who I hope I pronounced that correctly, who's sort of like the second in command of the country. I think Mao is still around at this point. So they're sitting next to each other. Dinner begins, whatever. People are like having food. They're chilling. They're chit-chatting. And on the table in front of Pat Nixon is this small tin of Chinese cigarettes. And on it, there's a logo of two giant pandas. And she's looking at it and she's sort of like, oh, aren't they cute? I love them. Like she's sort of pointing at the tin. And Anlai is like, well, I'll give you some. And she's
pandas?
No, she's like, cigarettes? But then he's like, no, pandas, I'll give you a couple. And she's like, what? Okay, thanks. Like, sure, why not? So she's sort of like, okay, I don't know. All right. And Richard Nixon's probably in the corner being like, great. All she does is adopt animals. This is another couple of things, and I'm gonna have to clean up its shit and take care of its food bowl. And
I just pictured Richard Nixon grumpily cleaning up big piles of panda poo. Just spouting off slurs because that's all he did in those tapes.
That's all he did. It's like, really, Pat? More animals into the house?
That's a good Richard Nixon.
Thank you. You'll get many more of them. So,
good.
Anyway, China at this point, so this is a term called animal diplomacy that's been around for a long time. So China had sort of gifted pandas before, like over hundreds of years to different countries. A lot of other countries have practiced, like Egypt practiced it, like all these different things. But China's the famous one that everyone thinks about now when they think about panda diplomacy. They call it panda diplomacy is the term.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. And so one of the reasons why it became a thing at that point was there was an absence of bears from pre-communist iconography. And so at that point, they were sort of seen as like this neutral animal that could now represent communist China moving forward. It didn't have any baggage attached to it.
Oh, interesting.
So, and at that point, they had given a couple of pandas. I think they had given some pandas like to Russia and like maybe North Korea. I can't remember who I didn't quite track the timeline of every single one, but other people had them. But the fact that they were going to give them to the United States was a big deal. Yeah. And so a couple months, it's like a month later, two giant pandas arrived and were transported to Smithsonian's National Zoo in Washington, D.C.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so there had been bids for different zoos, like San Diego Zoo wanted them, a couple of different places wanted them. And Nixon, of course, being like Nixon, he was like, I have to be as strategic as possible. Like, where will this benefit me the most? And I think he's trying to curry favor with everybody in DC. And like, he sort of comes up with this rationale where he's like, no, the DC zoo is good because it's the national zoo. It's for the country. So it should be in DC. It should be representative of this. And also to remind everybody that I'm awesome and I opened up relations with China and I'm a genius, et cetera, et cetera.
And everyone should love me.
Everyone should love me.
No matter what.
Yeah, yes. And it's funny, I had a hinkling where I was like, I wonder if he mentions this in any of the Nixon tapes. You do know that Nixon was impeached, or actually technically he didn't get impeached. He resigned before he was impeached. But you do know about the tapes, I assume, yes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just making fun of you now. Yes, I understand you do know about it.
Oh, sorry. No, I don't know about them. Tell me everything.
So on the Nixon tapes, I was like, I wonder if there's any mentions of pandas.
Did you look it up?
I did look it up. So there's two specific conversations that I found. One of them is when the pandas arrive, he's talking to Pat. It's not that interesting.
So excited. But no. Doesn't matter.
where he's just like, it's a conversation with him and Pat, where he's just like, hey, Pat, how did it go? Did the pandas arrive safely? Sorry, I couldn't get out of work. And she's like, oh, yeah, they were great. I can't do a Pat Nixon impression, but she's just like, yeah, it was great. The
she
crowds
sounds
were big
just like him.
Yeah, she's just like, oh,
a lady.
Yes, my husband, great. He's like, oh, yes, Panda. I'm Pat Nixon. It's sort of this very like cheeky, it's like only like a minute and a half of tape I could find on YouTube where he's just sort of like, it's very like, oh, sorry, I couldn't get away from work, but I just wanted to check in and see, you're just checking in on his wife to make sure that, it all went well and he was excited about it. He's being supportive. The second conversation is Richard Nixon calls the Washington Star's foreign editor Crosby Noyes. And basically, this is his first ploy to try and get the press to get excited about the fact that he's brought these pandas down.
Oh, wow.
And so he's really excited to talk to them about it. And he's like, the pandas, he's like, I negotiated this, whatever. Like, the pandas are coming. They were talking about trying to get it in San Diego, but, we wanted it to come to DC, so it's going to come to DC. And then he's having this conversation with the guy about, he's like, oh, because pandas famously in captivity, like, they're very difficult to get them to mate.
Yeah.
So he's having this conversation.
Don't watch.
They don't watch. Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. I'll get into that. So he's talking about this guy. He's just like, in China, the pandas don't know, and if they're born in captivity, they don't know how to procreate. So they have to show them these videos about how it's done, so they don't get confused.
Nixon did not talk about panda porn.
He does talk about the panda porn.
I don't know why that makes me so happy.
It's great. And so all I kept thinking was, did he watch the panda porn and he's telling him about it? Which then I had in my mind like a whole scene of like Richard Nixon in China, like talking to the zookeepers, and they're like, check this out. Like, look at this panda porn that we've got. Right? And he's just sitting there with his whole staff. Like, and watching panda porn.
He secretly loves it.
Oh, yeah. And then it's just like, he's probably just sitting there and he's just like, he's laughing about it. And then he like nudges like the person next to him. And he's just like, hey, Haldeman, look, it's Kissinger. like just
like
talking
this.
shit.
You should write fan fiction about the Nixon era and make it sexy.
Anyway, so it's this big deal. So I was reading about this and I was like, okay, that's cool. That's fun. And then I'm like, I don't really know much about pandas. I don't know how much you know about pandas, but
not much.
So I'm trying to think of like how I even proceed here without offending anybody. But like pandas are just, they're so kind of dumb and weird and like insane. And like the more I kept reading about them, I'm like, what? Why? I don't understand. And they're hilarious. But this is the thing. They're funny as shit.
Yeah.
So, pandas. So,
it's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay. I'm just trying to think of like how I get all this information out. So, in short, most of this has to do with like pandas in captivity, but also this is like a combination of stuff. So, I'll get into some of the stuff that only happens in captivity versus how it is in the wild. But just generally speaking, pandas, they kind of don't do shit except sit around and eat bamboo for like. Sometimes like 14 hours a day.
What?
And not at once. So what they'll do is they'll wake up, they'll eat bamboo for like 4 hours straight. And then they'll be like, okay, I'm tired. And then they'll go to sleep for like 2 hours. And then they'll wake up and be like, oh, I haven't had bamboo in like 2 hours. And then they'll just eat bamboo for like another 4 hours and then go back to sleep. So that's all they're doing. Most of the day is eating bamboo and then just sleeping and then waking up.
Sleeping? Sounds amazing.
Yeah. These creatures are highly relatable in the modern age, by the way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, but they have like, they have sharp teeth and like their digestive systems are made for, so they're carnivore, or they're omnivores, they're carnivores. Like they're supposed to be eating like meat and stuff. And I guess there's like whatever. There's sometimes there's like little stuff that's on the bamboo, but 99% of their diet is bamboo.
So they could eat meat, but they choose not to.
It's like, sciencey people will sort of like get into the bamboos about that. But more or less, yes, they sort of just prefer to eat bamboo and that's what they eat. They do eat other stuff occasionally, but most of it's bamboo.
Wow.
And again, like, so I was like, why? And basically it's like, well, where they were in China, there was just a bunch of bamboo. So they're like, oh, we could hunt Or we could just eat all this bamboo stuff that's directly in front of us. And so I guess we'll just do that.
I would have done that too.
It's just the most like bachelor thing of all time too, because it just like reminds me of like Sarah's out of town for like a night or like two. I just become like, I'm like, I don't really need to get food. I'll just eat whatever's in the house. And then I'm eating like cucumbers for 4 days straight with feta cheese.
Handfuls of cheese. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. So I'm like, the bambus just do that as a species.
Yeah. Wow.
They're like, whatever, it's
the
easy.
Bamboos?
I'll just eat this.
The bamboos.
I'm sorry, the pandas. The pandas.
I was gonna say I'm a bamboo. No, I'm a panda.
The pandas do this just as a way of life. So remember when I said that pandas don't do shit?
Yeah, they don't. Do they?
That's actually a lie. No.
Oh.
Literally, most of what they do is shitting. That's.
Go on. I just like how you presented that information to me.
It's called a plant and a payoff.
It's beautiful.
So, pandas shit all the time. They even shit in their sleep. I've seen videos of this. Yeah, pandas will be just like, with like the what did we have last time with like the cap and like the single candle and shitting while they're doing that.
Yep. With their little nightcap that they blow.
Yep. Nightcap, shitting and snoring.
So much.
Like I said, so they're omnivores, and so their digestive tract is very short, and they're only eating bamboo 99% of the time, which means that it's just fiber. It's just like 90% of what they're eating is just fiber. So just eating fiber all the time, and they have short digestive tracts, which means they can only keep shit in their body for like a short period of time before the nutrition's absorbed. So what this averages out to is a giant panda will shit every 15 to 20 minutes.
That's awful. It's like
that's 2 shits for every episode of like, I don't know, Young Sheldon, whatever you're watching. If you're watching an episode of Young Sheldon,
a
panda
dare
shit
you?
Twice. In one day, a panda will literally shit up to 40 times a day.
What?
Yeah. If pandas wore pants, they'd just be shitting them nonstop.
Hey, just like you always pack an extra pair.
Love it.
Underwear.
That
was that
pants,
night
shitting underwear.
I almost peed my pants.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I was trying to walk in New York and what did you say? You said something that made me almost.
We were talking about packing for a vacation. A trip. In this case, it wasn't a vacation, but it was every time I pack for a trip, I always bring extra pants shitting underwear in the unlikely event that I shit my pants, which has never happened, by the way.
And he just kept bringing it up. And I was tired after a long day at the booth. And I had to sit on the ground and hold perfectly still to keep myself from peeing my pants. All because you just kept saying underwear. That. I've never done it.
Yes. I've never done it either, but I'm paranoid. So like I brought. So pandas, if they ever travel, just double the amount of days that you're going, all pants shitting underwear, but times 40 even. I don't know. Which led me to another thought, which is, why are the Charmin bears, the toilet paper with the Charmin bears?
Yeah.
Why aren't they panda bears? Why are they not panda bears?
True.
If you work for Charmin, please call me, because I have an ad campaign for you that's about pandas shitting themselves, and the only thing that will save them all day is the Charmin wipes. Anyway,
beautiful. It's
strange. It's $1 million campaign.
You're in LA. Go pitch it somewhere.
Exactly. If anybody, like I said, if anybody that works for Charmin is listening, please let me know. Anyway, so, I got into some of it about, it doesn't really matter, some of the details about like why they're able to, but they have like special gut bacteria that that helps them with their digestive aid and all that. So they've like adapted to it essentially. So it's not because like they're genetically made some way, they just have developed some flora or something in their guts that can do it.
Crazy.
Yeah. So the other thing is, so pandas are weird. They're funny. They're shitting themselves and sleeping and eating food that has no nutrition. It's basically like they're just sitting around eating Doritos all day. But they're important for China.
Okay.
In China, you probably heard this. So Panda owns all the pandas. I'm talking about giant pandas specifically.
Panda owns all the pandas.
I keep saying panda. China owns all of the pandas in the world.
Even the ones they give away?
Yes. So, which in and of itself, I'm like, how does a country just own an animal? How do you own a species? I've never heard of like anything. Like, we don't even, the bald eagle is like the symbol of America, but like, I don't think we like own bald eagles.
We don't. Nature does.
Nature does. I feel like very like, settlers coming in to meet with Native Americans. And I'm like, how do you own land? I'm like, how do you own animals? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
We make the rules around here. That's what China says.
Yeah. So apparently it's like, it really just comes down to the fact that pandas are only native to China, obviously.
Oh, wow.
And so because of that, China's like, well, yeah, we cornered the market on this. We got it. And they have used this to their benefit. So initially it's panda diplomacy, which was like they gave them out as gifts to people as a way to try and, grease the wheels or just like be nice to somebody and sort of have them like you more.
Or to get like a symbol of China and their culture out to the world too.
That's the other thing too. Yes, that's going to be my next point. So it's also good PR for Panda because it's great. You had it right.
China, good PR for China.
So also like when these pandas came to DC, people like lost their minds. Like they were just like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. Like pandas are so adorable. Like they're so funny and they're iconic looking, right? And they're very cute and they're goofy and they fumble around and like they're hilarious. Like they're fun to watch. So it's like benefit for everybody. Like Nixon got to be like, check it out. I like opened up relations to China and I got this thing that's cuddly and likable and everyone loves it. China all of a sudden is like, okay, we're not this terrifying, revolutionary communist country. We also have like cool bears that are awesome and fun.
It's constantly.
The poop constantly, highly relatable to Americans. And so it's like this mutually beneficial thing. But what ends up happening so it's sort of gone in these phases of this panda diplomacy. So initially it was gifts that they were giving. And eventually China starts to realize after a few years where they're like, like we've been giving them out to places. People are like, these pandas are really, really popular. People like eat this up. Like they get really excited and obsessed with them. So I think what we got to do is we got to start a panda leasing program because we're just giving these things away for free.
Smart.
Right. So like, you got like a world leader. He goes onto the lot and he sees all these pandas and he's just like, man, this thing's beautiful. I love it. And then the salesman, he comes out from his office and he's like, saw you looking at that panda over there. Yeah. Yeah.
It could be
you
yours.
And that panda look great. It could be yours. What do I got to do to send you home with a panda today?
$200 down.
Yeah. And, he's kind of like, I don't know, or, I shouldn't, I need to discuss. He's like, I really love this one, but I got to discuss financial decisions with my wife or like, Congress, whoever.
Congress, yeah.
Congress before I make any rash decisions. And
Parliament.
the guy is Parliament. And the salesman's just kind of like, oh, wow, I thought you were a man. I didn't realize I was talking to a bitch. And then he gets really mad.
Okay. Historic.
And he's just like, what? No, I'm not. I'm a man. I don't care. I'll sign this lease. I'll take whatever. I'm in charge. I'm the big boy. I'm the eldest son. I get to wear the big boy pants. I don't care what it is. I'm just going to sign the contract. And then now you're hosed,
Wow.
They got the undercoat. They've got the extended warranty. They got everything. They just signed it away. It doesn't matter because they're desperate to have this panda.
Now.
Exactly. And so a giant panda lease typically is 10 years long. 10 years.
What?
Guess how much it costs?
So, how much?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You have a question. Go ahead. Yeah, go ask.
No, so like all the pandas we see are just being leased from China?
Yes. They're being leased. They're on loan. They're on loan and they're being leased. They don't own. They're not buying to own. They're just renting them out. So for one panda per year, you have to pay China $1 million. So it's $1 million every year. Just out the door that you're paying the Chinese just for the pleasure of the pandas company. $1 million. And these things, as I mentioned before, they're worse than BMWs. They're just going to break down every 5 minutes. They're just shitting everywhere and they got to eat like 40 pounds of bamboo every day.
And bamboo does not grow where you have them.
Does it grow on trees?
So
yeah, right.
It grows in stalks. You know what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Raccoons are native to only the U.S. I think we should do this with raccoons.
You and
I should do this.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret, actually. The reason that I said I was reading a bunch of other stuff before I got to this tab, I was actually reading about raccoons specifically.
Weird.
Yeah, and then people kept saying trash panda, and then I randomly thought about pandas, and then I was like, oh, this is funnier. I might go back and do. I did have one tabbed up on raccoons. That has a funny story too. Me too. I learned some interesting facts. Anyway, whatever. Well, I'll probably do that at another point. But
okay.
So basically, it's $1 million a year to have a panda, and of course, everyone's trying to mate, trying to get them to mate, right? So, and I'll get into all that in a second. But if you're lucky enough to have a baby, right, which is also very hard for the reasons I'll get into. So that means you have to have a couple. And if you have a baby, if you're lucky, if they have a baby, then you got to pay another fee to the Chinese government. Or whatever, the organization that's in charge of, panda
it's the government.
Diplomacy.
Let's face it.
It's all sort of, part of the government. You got to pay, if you have a baby that's born in your zoo, you have to pay a fee of $400,000 annually to them for having this baby. So basically, which is basically the same as having a baby in the United States, except and you don't have insurance, so you can't cover it.
Yeah.
So basically, if you have a couple who has a baby, you are now paying the Chinese government $2.5 million every year just to have them.
Why? So why would you even want to breed them if that's the case?
Great question. One, because they're endangered.
Oh, right.
Two,
right.
because people love them. That's huge
true.
Crowds. People love
baby pandas.
They're good for business.
That's true.
And so the part of, so again, I was trying to not read for like 50 hours about this because there's so much about panda breeding and so I'm just going to do the general Cliff's Notes. And I think I'll just say up front, there's a lot of stuff that's ridiculous and there's a lot of stuff that's kind of like unfortunate, but generally speaking, it seems like there's two buckets of how this works, which is, and it's taken them a long time to kind of figure this out, which is like pandas breed one way in nature and then they tried to sort of, and they weren't really taking that into account as well as they should have while they were in captivity. And it took them a lot of years to figure out like how to sort of line all that up is the extremely short explanation of what happens here.
Okay.
So fun facts. This is clear for all of it. So for example, one of them is they draw huge crowds and pandas, as it turns out, don't like having sex in front of huge crowds of people.
I was right when I said don't watch.
Yeah, don't watch.
I mean, neither do I. But
no, I don't either. I mean, I'm not here to kink shame anybody, but if you're a panda, I'm not. I'm not into that either. Maybe we're kink shaming pandas. Who knows? But I can't remember which zoo it was. One of the zoos. Speaking of COVID, one of the zoos where during COVID, like attendance had gone down. That's randomly when the pandas had managed to conceive because they were in the theories that they're like, oh, I think people weren't staring at them and tapping on the glass or whatever.
Oh my god. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, bizarre. So additionally, a female panda can only conceive for more or less it's like 48 hours, or it's basically like 2 days.
What?
It's like 2 to 3 days out of the entire year. That's how small the window is.
How are they still alive? How do they still exist?
That's the thing. Yeah, people are like, it's funny. There's all this stuff online. It's a joke, clearly. It's not like, I don't think people who get this into animals don't like animals, but it's like a fake joke where people are like, we should just let pandas die because they're so dumb. Because they're just like, how are you so bad at life?
How have you survived this long?
Yeah, it's clearly tongue in cheek. People don't get mad about this. Like people are like, just, they're joking about it. But, and it's funny because there's all this video. Again, you can see videos of like females being like, dude, just like basically doing the panda equivalent of like spreading their legs and being like, give it to me.
For just 2 days.
For 2 days. And a lot of the male pandas are like, huh? Sorry. Like, I can't press pause on the game I'm playing. It's online gaming. Like, can you like,
and by online gaming, you mean it's just pooping.
Pooping and eating bamboo. Don't forget, this bamboo, it's not what their body needs either. So like they're not getting all the nutrients that they need. So like they're malnourished on some level because so they're just like it's like just eat a steak. It'll help you.
Eat a steak, get pregnant.
Yeah. So that's pretty hard. Speaking of hard, another problem.
Oh
Pandas have basically a micro penis. And I'm
Okay. Okay.
I'm not here to dick shame. This is just the facts. A panda's penis is about 3 centimeters long, or basically under a quarter of an inch.
That's little.
Yeah. So if pandas could drive, they would have the flashiest sports cars or the most lifted trucks ever. That's how tiny their wieners are.
Wow. Poor guys.
So it's a delicate dance to try and get them to, this is why they got to watch panda porn sometimes when they're in captivity to try and understand better.
Oh my. Okay. I just can't believe they still exist. That's all.
It's baffling, right? So during pregnancy, so if they do get pregnant, it's hard to see because females produce progesterone whether or not they're pregnant. So you can't even look at it hormonally necessarily to see. And even with an ultrasound, it's really tough because the embryo is it's basically the size of an eraser, the fetus, and it's hidden behind layers of fat, bladder, and a stomach full of bamboo.
That's kind of similar to humans sometimes.
Is it?
One time, if the placenta, my friend went in for a scan when she was pregnant, and they couldn't see the baby because the placenta was in front of it.
Yeah.
And they were like, sorry, come back.
Yeah. And so this happens with pandas a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
And pregnancies can last from anywhere from 3 to 5 months because the embryo may not embed in the uterine lining immediately after conception. So it also just takes a while, even once
floats around.
Yeah. I think you can only get, I think if I remember correctly, it's in the spring they can get pregnant, but it won't actually happen until the summer.
Weird.
Yeah. So I'm just imagining this embryo just shitting and eating bamboo on its way down to the uterine lining because it's just taking forever.
What a life.
Yeah. And so in the slim chance that they do get pregnant, the babies are really, really tiny. They're really tiny.
They come out little, huh?
They come out very little. And just to give you a point of reference, I think I could be wrong with this, but from what I could see, it's a human is about 20 times bigger than a baby, when it's a newborn. And then elephants are a couple hundred in relation to them. A panda is 900 times bigger than its baby.
So what would that be for us if I had a baby and it came out an inch tall?
It's got to be 900 times smaller than you. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think to do the reverse math.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that they're just eating bamboo all the time. They're not eating something that the baby needs to get to grow and get big.
Oh my goodness.
So it's I'm very worried about pandas. I'm what are you guys doing? You're not taking care of yourself.
Just eat.
Just eat.
Do more.
And I'm super panda shaming, but
it's making me mad, honestly.
It's making me upset for their panda. Okay, so the last thing I'll tell you, what's very common too is that if a panda gives birth to twins, she'll just be like, yeah, no, I don't need this other one. I don't need a duplicate. I only need one. I already got one. Why do I need a backup?
Like rats?
Yeah, they'll just be like, whatever. Which with
eat
rats,
does she eat it?
No, I think she just is bye. She just doesn't take care of it.
That's insane.
It is. It's mostly insane because they're so endangered, right? Not that the panda understands this, but that's why it's unfortunate. No. With rats, I don't care, whatever. Disgusting. But
can I tell you a quick story?
Yes.
I'll be fast. My sister had hamsters. My sister had 3 hamsters as a kid, and one of them had babies because we didn't know that one was a boy. And anyway, impregnated another one, and my sister was like, "What are these things?" She came home one day and there were babies, and then the next day, she couldn't find the babies.
Oh no!
And so I'm probably telling this story wrong. I wish maybe she'll correct me. But she started digging through. She's 7, by the way. Whoa. She starts digging through and she finds the heads of all the babies.
Oh my god! This explains a lot about you and your family, which I really like.
This isn't the first time we've had a rodent eat its whole litter in my house. So anyway,
that's awesome.
That's my story. Go on.
Anyway. Wow. Okay.
I derailed that so
No, it's okay. It's not even derailing. I'm just picturing it in my head now.
Yeah, it's gross.
So anyway, I kind of said this before, but the panda breeding thing in captivity is they don't want to be exhibitionists. They're not necessarily. So at one point also, but they realized they used to keep the males and the females separate.
Oh.
And then be like, oh, it's breeding time to bring in the male. And pandas are like, I don't know her. I just met her. I'm not going to just bang her. What the hell is this? There's all this
They have to have a relationship?
there's all this like pheromone type stuff that happens and like scents and like things that they have to put on. So it's like everything just takes forever with a panda. So it took them a long time to figure that out. So they're getting better about it. And there's like, there's more panda pregnancies these days than there were like in the 70s and 80s. But so the other part that's interesting is like China's power has grown obviously quite a bit over the past like 10, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so now pandas, so this is sort of like their third stage. So the first stage was the gifts, then it's the lease. And now they're like these tools for like flexing soft power. And they've become like these ambassadors, like it's unofficial. And remember how we were talking about like civilization? It's basically like the same thing. Game. Where it's like the game, yeah. So they're like
getting a culture victory.
Your culture victory, like now you have panda ambassadors in your country, and you have good relations, and like they can trade. And you don't want to piss off like a seafaring nation. Yeah, I know. We should be sponsored by them at this point.
Please, Sid Meier.
Yeah, please give us money. Anyway, so they basically. So there's these researchers at the University of Oxford, and they start to like kind of put in these whatever stuff into like a spreadsheet, and they're looking at like China's trade deals, and they're looking at pandas, and they're looking at like they start to notice like a correlation of things. And they're like, oh, interesting. China's international trade deals kind of line up with some of these panda leases. So for example, China had a trade relationship with Norway. I think salmon was the big thing that they were trading with them because they wanted to bring them to China. And things were good and they were doing well. And then in 2010, the Nobel Peace Prize goes to a Chinese dissident. And
oh, no.
Yeah. And the next thing you know, Scotland in the Edinburgh Zoo is like, hey, we just got pandas. This is really cool. Funny enough, Edinburgh and Scotland has salmon. And they also have like Land Rovers and stuff.
Wow.
And the Chinese are like, that's apparently one of the things that like the burgeoning middle class wanted. And so the next thing you know, they're basically like, China's like, yeah, sorry, like Norway, we don't like you anymore. And now Edinburgh is the zoo that has like these awesome pandas and things are going great there. Yeah, they're like, they don't get to sit at the cool table. Norway doesn't get to sit at the cool kids table anymore.
Because they gave an award to a dissident.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Or I should say, this is speculation. This is not like an official stance on anything. And there's no actual, people can feel free to refute this. It just might be like a thing. But it just looks like.
Fill in the blanks.
You can fill in the blanks if you want, I should say. And then in 2009, there was a giant panda that was in DC and its time was up. And they tried to extend its lease. And China was like, no, we're not doing that. Why? Because, again, not why. We can't say officially because there's no official declaration of saying the reasons why. But perhaps coincidentally, Obama had recently met with the Dalai Lama. And the U.S. had made an arms deal with Taiwan.
Yeah, we did. That pissed them off.
China can giveth a panda and China can taketh away.
Because they own all of them.
They own them all. And they've got the racket on it. And last year... So I'm almost done. So I'll wrap it up. So pandas that were in DC, there was a few that were left. They left last year. And currently the only place, if I'm not mistaken, that you can see pandas in the United States that's left is in Atlanta.
Really?
Yeah. And there's 4 of them. They have a
huge zoo.
Yeah. So there's a lot of big, they got big airports. Speaking of another airport, that would be a good airport to be trapped in because it's very large.
That's a fine airport.
That's a good one. And there's only like a family of 4, and apparently the lease is set to expire in 2024 this year of these pandas. So,
are they going to renew it?
Well, I don't know if history is historically, if we're like looking at the past, right? Like Chinese American relations haven't been great, and they're not getting much better.
No.
So in theory, there's a worry. There's no way to prove this. It's going to happen. No one actually knows, but there's a fear that they might just be like, yeah, cool, Atlanta's done, we're gone, bye. And then we won't have pandas anymore. Yeah. And then we can't be a seafaring nation anymore. We won't get the technology.
We won't have that tech. We won't have that. They're going to get a culture victory over us.
Culture victory. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're going to start wearing your blue jeans and listening to your pop music. I think that's what the leaders say. It's like a canned response every time. Yeah. They're like, they're listening to your music and wearing your blue jeans. And it's like Gandhi saying it. And you're like, what?
What? Yeah. Right.
I'm going to stop talking about Civ.
No, I brought it up.
Go on.
The last thing I'll say is they get packed up in these planes, and they're called FedEx Panda Express planes.
Oh my gosh.
And they have like a giant picture of like a panda on the side. It's like a whole thing.
What?
Again, I was gonna go into all of that, but I was like, I've already gone too long.
I don't know what to say. This is I had no idea. I thought pandas just were whoever's had them, you know?
No. And so like at the beginning of this, I was like, oh, pandas are dumb. And by the end of this, I'm like, no, actually, humans are still the dumbest. Because we're like, there's this thing, and we're like, oh no, other country, please don't take away this animal that you now own, because that's a thing. Like, we want to keep these things that shit and eat bamboo and just like fall over with their micro penises all day long because it makes us money. And they're like, no,
we don't care about human rights. We want pandas.
Because you gave somebody else an award and we don't like, and you start thinking about humans and you're like, we're the dumbest creatures in existence. Yeah. Like, we were a mistake.
Should have stayed in the trees.
Should have stayed in the trees. It's so much of modern life is so stupid. And the pandas just sort of got wrapped up in it by accident, like unbeknownst to them. They have no fault in this. They're just like, what do you want from us?
They're the cutest, dumbest things. Wow.
Who shit all the time, just constantly shitting. Day.
It's like having a newborn. That's like having a newborn, but way worse.
Yeah, but it'll never grow out of it. It'll just continue shitting.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's world? My top. I had no idea.
I didn't know either. I was laughing. I was dying laughing.
Because Pat Nixon was like, "What's that?"
Was like, "Oh, that's so cute."
That's cute.
I mean, I think you could make an argument that they might have come anyway. Like, it seems like that was sort of what they were starting to use as a tool for diplomacy.
Yeah, but what a huge, giving it as a gift. Like, back in the day, like, if I'm talking about, like, 100, 200 years ago, like, an emissary from somewhere shows up and they give you something that you can only get in that country. Yeah. That was a huge sign of, like, hey, I'm willing to have open talks and trade with you.
Yep.
That's big.
It's crazy. Anyway,
what
would I bring? I would bring a closed tab, hopefully.
On a platter. Please, here you go. Take my country's export.